Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Coinexa Vault. What you are about to witness in this video is going to fundamentally shift the way you think about the quarters sitting in your car's cup holder, your kitchen drawer, or that old piggy bank you haven't opened in years, because the coins we are covering today are not just old quarters, they are documented collector targets that have sent serious numismatists into a frenzy, and I promise you, the deeper we go into this list, the more extraordinary it gets, with the final coin being the kind of discovery that makes even seasoned experts stop and stare. So lock in, do not skip ahead, and let's get into it right now. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 1996 D Washington quarter is one of the most perfectly disguised examples of that truth in all of modern American coinage, because this coin, struck at the Denver Mint in 1996, looks, at first glance, like every other quarter you've ever received as change. And that's exactly what makes it so dangerous to overlook. The Washington Quarter series, running since 1932, is one of the most widely collected series in American numismatics, and within that long, rich history, certain years and mint combinations rise to the top of every serious collector's want list, and the 1996 D has quietly, steadily, built itself a reputation that demands attention. Now let's talk about why this coin matters and what collectors are actually paying for premium examples, because the number attached to certified GEM-grade specimens of this coin is not what most people would expect when they hear the words, a quarter from 1996. In the collector market, a standard circulated 1996 D Washington quarter is worth face value, 25 cents, and nobody is going to argue with that. But here is where it gets genuinely exciting. Here is where the story takes a turn that most people never see coming, because a 1996 D Washington quarter that has been preserved in mint state condition, certified by PCGS or NGC at MS67 or higher, enters a completely different universe of value. One where collectors are willing to write serious checks to own a single coin that most people would drop into a parking meter without a second thought. The Denver Mint in 1996 was operating at high volume, cranking out hundreds of millions of quarters for general circulation, and because of that sheer volume, quality control became inconsistent, meaning that truly pristine, sharply struck, fully lustrous examples represent only a tiny fraction of the total production, and it is that fraction, those rare survivors that somehow made it from the mint to a collector's hands without a single mark, scratch, or contact point, that commands the real premium. Collectors have documented certain 1996 D specimens with particularly strong strike definition on Washington's hair detail and the eagle's feathers on the reverse, and those coins in the highest certified grades have sold for amounts that would make your jaw drop if you expected a quarter to be worth a quarter. The 1996 D has also attracted attention for minor die variety discoveries, subtle differences in the positioning of design elements that most people would never notice without magnification, but that dedicated variety hunters have catalogued and chased with remarkable persistence, because in numismatics, the smallest detail can be the difference between a common coin and a documented rarity. Imagine the story of someone cleaning out their grandmother's jewelry box, finding a small envelope of quarters she had set aside, because they looked nice, and discovering among them a 1996 D so perfectly preserved that it grades MS67. That is not a fictional scenario, that is the kind of discovery that the coin community celebrates and that reminds every collector, beginner and expert alike, that great finds do not always come from famous auction houses. They come from shoeboxes, from forgotten jars, from the quiet corners of lives that ended before their owners knew what they had. The history of 1996 itself adds another layer to this coin story. It was a presidential election year, it was the year of the Atlanta Summer Olympics, it was a moment when America was riding a wave of economic optimism and cultural energy, and all of that history is compressed into this small, silver-toned disc of copper-nickel alloy that most people have held without ever feeling the weight of what it represents. And as I always remind you here on CoinExa Vault, the real value of any coin depends entirely on its condition, its grade, and whether it has been professionally authenticated and certified. A circulated 1996D is not going to change your life, but a gem quality, certified example is the kind of coin that belongs in a serious collection and commands a price to match. Before we move on, I need to tell you that what's coming next in this video makes the 1996D look like the opening act. The next coin on our list has a story that goes deeper, hits harder, and carries collector significance that will genuinely surprise you, so do not touch that skip button, because you would be making a very expensive mistake. Next, 1988 P Washington Quarter, and I need you to understand something before I even begin telling you about this coin, because the Philadelphia Mint issue from 1988 carries a reputation in numismatic circles that is entirely out of proportion with how ordinary it looks in your hand. And that gap between appearance and reality is exactly what makes it one of the most fascinating coins we are covering today. Think about how many times you've received a 1988 quarter as change, at a vending machine, at a laundromat, tucked inside a birthday card from a relative who meant well, and think about how many times you've given it away without a single thought, because that's exactly what most people do, and that's exactly why collectors who know better have a significant advantage over the rest of the world. The 1988 P Washington Quarter was struck in Philadelphia at a time when the U.S. Mint was managing enormous production pressures, and the result was a coin that exists on a vast spectrum of quality, from heavily worn, barely identifiable circulation pieces that are worth exactly 25 cents, all the way up to breathtaking, gem-quality specimens that preserve every detail of John Flanagan's iconic Washington portrait and the heraldic eagle reverse with a sharpness and luster that makes them look like they just rolled off the press this morning. Now here is what serious collectors know about the 1988 P that the average person absolutely does not. In the highest certified grades, MS67 and above, this coin is genuinely scarce, and I mean genuinely scarce in a way that the raw mintage numbers do not telegraph at all, because while millions were produced, the survival rate of truly flawless examples is far, far lower than you would expect, and the collector demand for those flawless examples is intense and growing. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 did not use a mint mark on its quarters, a practice that had been consistent for decades, and that absence of a mint mark is itself a detail that newcomers to the hobby sometimes overlook when attributing and valuing their coins. So if you're holding a 1988 Washington Quarter right now and wondering which mint it came from, the answer is simple: no mint mark means Philadelphia. What collectors have also documented about the 1988 P series is a handful of die variety discoveries, subtle but real differences between the working dies used throughout the year that created measurably distinct coin types, some with slightly different positioning of the date, some with microscopic doubling on specific design elements that only reveals itself under a loupe or digital microscope. And those varieties, when found in high-grade certified examples, attract a premium that casual observers find genuinely shocking. Picture a retired schoolteacher who spent 30 years setting aside coins that looked different or felt special, not because she knew exactly what she was doing but because she had an instinct, a feeling that not all coins are the same. And imagine her sitting down with a numismatist one afternoon and learning that a small group of 1988 P quarters she preserved in individual flips had been graded and certified at MS67, placing them among the finest known examples of that date and mint combination. That kind of story happens in this hobby, not every day, but often enough to remind us that knowledge is the most valuable tool any collector can possess, and that the coins hiding the biggest surprises are rarely the ones you'd expect. The broader context of 1988 matters too. It was the final year of Ronald Reagan's presidency, a moment of significant political transition in America, and the economic landscape of that period meant that coins moved quickly through commerce, which is precisely why high-grade survivors are so uncommon today. Every 1988 P quarter that escaped the brutal gauntlet of circulation, the cash register drawers, the parking meters, the vending machines, the bottom of a purse, and made it to a collector's hands in pristine condition is a small miracle of preservation, and the market prices for the finest certified examples reflect exactly that. And as always, remember, the condition and certification of your coin determines everything, because a circulated 1988 P quarter is a quarter, but a gem-certified one is a collector's prize. Stay with me, because the next coin on this list takes everything I just told you and raises the stakes dramatically. There is something about what's coming that I think is going to genuinely catch you off guard, and I am not going to let you miss it. Next, 1987 D Washington Quarter, and right from the start I want you to understand that this coin from the Denver Mint carries a particular mystique in the Washington Quarter series, one that has been building quietly for decades while most people continued spending these coins without a moment's hesitation. And the reason for that mystique comes down to a combination of factors that individually might not seem remarkable, but together create one of the most compelling collector stories in late 20th century American coinage. The year 1987 sits in a unique position in the history of the Washington Quarter. It predates the dramatic surge in coin collecting interest that came with the state quarter program of 1999, which means that coins from this era were minted during a period when public awareness of coin values was relatively low, circulation was high, and preservation of choice specimens was the exception rather than the rule. In other words, most 1987 D Washington quarters were spent, worn, and lost to history, and the ones that survived in truly exceptional condition are not just old coins, they are survivors in the most literal numismatic sense of that word. The Denver Mint's output in 1987 was substantial, as it always is, but here is the truth that the raw numbers obscure. Volume of production and rarity of gem survivors are not the same thing, and the 1987 D has proven, through decades of population report data from PCGS and NGC, that finding a perfectly struck, fully lustrous, contact mark-free example is genuinely difficult, and that difficulty translates directly into collector demand and premium pricing for those who manage to locate one. What makes the 1987 D particularly interesting to variety hunters is the documented existence of subtle strike inconsistencies across the mintage, certain dies used later in the production run showing signs of wear that created slightly softer detail in Washington's hair above the ear, while earlier production coins with fresh dies exhibit a sharpness that practically leaps off the coin's surface under proper lighting. Collectors have spent years building reference sets of 1987 D die varieties, and the numismatic literature on this date, while not as voluminous as some earlier classic issues, contains enough documented discoveries to make this coin a legitimate target for serious researchers. Now imagine a young collector in the early 1990s, just getting into the hobby, who decided to pull every Washington quarter they received in change and sort them by date and mint, a simple, obsessive habit that many great collectors start with, and who, through sheer consistency and attention, accumulated a small group of 1987 D specimens in what appeared to be exceptional condition. Years later, with professional grading services becoming mainstream, those coins go into holders, and several come back at MS-67, placing them in the company of the finest documented examples of this date and making that early, patient habit of saving coins worth something truly meaningful. That story is not an exaggeration of what happens in this hobby. It is a template for how some of the most important collection pieces have been assembled over the decades, through patience, knowledge, and the refusal to treat any coin as just a coin. The economic and cultural context of 1987 adds texture to this coin story as well, It was the year of Black Monday, the dramatic stock market crash of October 19th that sent shockwaves through the American economy and reminded the country that financial security is never as stable as it seems, a context that gives a coin about preservation and hidden value an almost poetic resonance. The 1987 D Washington quarter, in its finest certified form, is not a coin that shouts its value from across the room. It is a coin that rewards the careful, the knowledgeable, and the patient, and in that way it embodies everything that serious numismatics is really about. And remember, as I always tell you, condition is everything, grade is everything, and certification by a recognized service is what separates a coin worth face value from a coin worth a collector's serious attention. We are building towards something extraordinary in this video, and what's coming with our final coin is the reason I asked you at the very start not to go anywhere, because everything we've covered so far has been leading to this, and the story of the last coin on our list is the one that is going to stay with you long after this video ends. Next, 1981 P Washington quarter, and I saved this one for last for a reason, because the 1981 P Washington quarter from the Philadelphia Mint is the coin on this list that consistently generates the most stunned reactions from collectors who encounter a top-grade certified example for the first time, and the reason for that reaction is rooted in a combination of numismatic history, documented rarity, and a set of circumstances surrounding this coin's production that make it genuinely one of the most fascinating Washington quarter issues of the entire modern era. Let's set the scene for 1981. The United States was emerging from a brutal period of economic stagflation, interest rates were historically high, Ronald Reagan had just taken office and the country was in a mood of both anxiety and cautious optimism, and the U.S. Mint was producing coinage at the volumes required by an economy that, despite its troubles, was still moving enormous amounts of physical currency through everyday commerce. The Philadelphia Mint's 1981 Washington quarters rolled out by the hundreds of millions, and because of that volume, because of the speed and pressure of mass production, truly exceptional specimens, coins that came out of the press with every detail razor sharp, every surface pristine, the luster flowing unbroken from rim to rim, were statistical outliers from day one. Coins that by pure chance escaped every opportunity for damage and somehow found their way into hands that recognized and preserved them. Now here is what makes the 1981 P the grand finale of this video, the coin that earns its position as the last and most extraordinary entry on our list. In the highest certified grades, this coin represents one of the most sought-after modern Washington quarter specimens in the entire hobby, with population reports from PCGS and NGC confirming that the number of examples graded at the absolute summit of the Mint state scale is jaw-droppingly small relative to the original production numbers, creating a scarcity that is real, documented, and reflected in the prices that serious collectors are willing to pay. But beyond the grading data, beyond the population reports and auction records, the 1981 P has another layer of fascination that draws collectors in and refuses to let them go, the type variety question, because 1981 was a transitional year in terms of the proof coinage produced alongside the business strikes. And while the Type 1 and Type 2 distinctions are primarily associated with proof sets of that year, the awareness of variety collecting that those distinctions created has caused collectors to look more carefully at 1,981 business strikes as well, driving deeper examination of the date and finding subtle but real differences between dies that have become the subject of ongoing numismatic research. Collectors have documented examples of 1981 P quarters with microscopic doubling on the obverse lettering, with die polish lines that create unusual reflective patterns in the fields, and with strike characteristics that distinguish early run coins from those produced as the dies aged. And each of these discoveries adds a dimension of collectability to a coin that the average person would drop into a gumball machine without a second thought. Picture a coin dealer at a small regional show in the mid-2000s, sorting through a bulk lot of mixed modern quarters purchased from a dealer who was liquidating an estate, spending hours at a folding table with a loupe, checking each coin's surfaces under a portable light, and then stopping, holding one coin at a particular angle, feeling the unmistakable hit of recognition that every serious numismatist knows. That electric moment when something in the pile is clearly, obviously different from everything around it. That coin, a 1981p in extraordinary condition, goes to the grading service and comes back certified at a level that places it among the finest known, and suddenly a coin that cost a fraction of a dollar becomes a centerpiece of a serious collection, a story that gets told at shows and in online forums, a reminder of why this hobby rewards those who look carefully and never assume they know what they're holding. The 1981p Washington quarter in gem certified condition is the kind of coin that bridges the gap between just collecting and serious numismatics, because it demands real knowledge, real attention, and real patience to find and recognize, and it rewards all three with a value that the general public genuinely cannot believe when they hear it. The history of 1981, the attempted assassination of President Reagan in March of that year, the air traffic controllers' strike, the beginning of a decade that would reshape American culture, is all part of the weight this coin carries, a weight that collectors feel when they hold a perfect example of a coin that circulated through one of the most turbulent and transformative years of the late 20th century. And here, at the end of everything we've covered today, I want to remind you one final time, the value of any coin, including this extraordinary 1981p Washington quarter, depends entirely on its condition, its professional grade, and its certification by a recognized service like PCGS or NGC, because that is what separates a piece of history from a piece of pocket change. If you have old Washington quarters sitting anywhere in your home, in a drawer, in a jar, in an inherited collection you haven't fully gone through, I want you to look at every single one, check the dates, check the mint marks, and consider getting anything that looks exceptional professionally evaluated, because the story we told today about the 1981p could be your story. And the only thing standing between you and that discovery is the decision to look carefully. Thank you for watching all the way to the end here on CoinNexa Vault. If this video gave you something valuable, please like it, share it with someone who loves coins, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss a discovery like the ones we covered today, because we are just getting started.